In a Manhattan dining room where silence endangers a multi-billion-dollar future, a brilliant but invisible waitress breaks the stalemate with perfect Japanese. The richest man in the world sees what everyone ignored, risks his empire on her mind, and together they build a new kind of power, one measured in kept promises. New York at night is a river of light that forgets to sleep. Aurelia is its private harbor, a velvet-sealed room where the temperature is always ambition. Crystal chandeliers hum softly, as if electricity itself were leaning in to listen. At the far end of a mahogany table sits Elon Vale, in this dramatized world the richest man alive, wearing simplicity the way other men wear armor. Across from him, Ken Tanaka, chairman of Tanaka Dynamics, with two aides who could pass for carved stone. Behind Vale, vice presidents, attorneys, numbers in suits. On the table, a joint venture worth $1.1 billion upfront and a runway to many billions more. Vale's frontier-grade AI fused with Tanaka's next-generation robotics. A deal that forges legacies. And then a single line of text detonates in Vale's phone. Family emergency. I'm so sorry. Daniel. Daniel-chan, the interpreter, is gone. Silence falls. Not the polite kind that makes room for music, but the vacuum between two cliffs. Vale tries a translation app. The synthetic voice mangles proprietary safeguards into sorcerer code prison. One of Tanaka's aides coughs into a napkin to smother a laugh and fails. A small breach becomes a tectonic crack. Perhaps we reschedule, Tanaka says in precise, accented English. Precision is essential. Reschedule is a lethal verb. It signals lost face. It gives oxygen to rumor that Jeff Bezos has been quietly courting the same deal, that Marcus Vance, Vale's most predatory rival, is circling. Vale's VP Jarrett Pierce leans in. We're dead in the water, he whispers. We can't discuss 7B without a translator. A waitress refills water with soundless grace, a black apron and a posture designed to be invisible. Emily Stone has eyes that catalog the room the way scholars catalog archives. Patterns first, judgments later. She clears Mr. Tanaka's empty plate. Arigato, Tanaka murmurs, almost reflex. Emily answers so softly only attention hears it. Do a tashimashite. The air ripples. Tanaka looks up, truly looks. The moment passes. The room continues its performance of collapse. Tanaka lays his chopsticks down with careful finality. Without precise communication, he says, we cannot proceed. Vale's jaw remains relaxed. But something inside the room forgets how to breathe. Forgive my impertinence, sir. The voice is young and steady, and it walks past rank as if rank were merely furniture. Heads snap toward the waitress by the service door. Hands folded, eyes clear. Emily Stone, she adds, then shifts registers with the elegance of a key change and speaks flawless Kigo Japanese. Tanaka-sama, Dushitsuryai Itashimashita. It pains me to see honorable partners separated not by intent, but only by language. Tanaka's aides straighten as if a current ran through their chairs. Tanaka himself tilts his head, curiosity replacing frost. You understand patents? Exclusivity? Technical risk? He asks in rapid Japanese. Hi, Emily replies. International relations with intellectual property modules. 2 years of full immersion outside Kyoto. I understand what must be said, and what must be understood. Jared scoffs. Mr.
Reschedule.
Vale, this is. Vale lifts a hand, calm, surgical. Let's hear her. The world shifts a few degrees toward the possible. Emily doesn't translate words. She interprets intent. To Tanaka, she says in Japanese, pointing gently to Clause 7B. This is not a cage. Think of it as a sacred garden. A protected space where this joint venture can grow without external vines. Discipline, not handcuffs. To Vale, she says in English, eyes steady. 5 years of exclusivity is an eternity in AI. They fear being contractually blind if a superior model emerges. Also, our stack is unproven at their scale. Reputation risk. Hiro Sato, Tanaka's chief engineer, Speaks for a minute in precise, dense Japanese, tapping the document the way a surgeon taps a ribcage before incision. Emily listens the way you listen to thunderstorms. Mapping distance, counting seconds. She turns to Vale. They need a future-proof mechanism that forces us to keep leading, without punishing them for seeing farther. Ask for their alternative, Vale says. A low exchange. Aides confer. The counterproposal arrives like a clean cord. 2-year exclusivity then. 3 years of right of first refusal. If a superior third-party AI appears, Croft/Vale AI, the stack, gets 6 months to match or exceed. If not, Tanaka may integrate the new system while maintaining a revised non-exclusive license to Vale's original stack. Vale looks at Emily, not at Jared, not at legal. Your analysis? It's elegant, she says.
Ask for their
It forces
alternative.
us to compete with our future selves. It reads as confidence, not paranoia. He smiles, not for show, but like a scientist who recognizes a correct proof. Tell Mr. Tanaka he has a deal. The room exhales. Tablets glow. Lawyers race reality. Champagne appears, a hush of celebration. Mr. Tanaka stands, lifts his glass in Japanese. To Miss Stone, the bridge we did not know we needed. Vale turns slightly toward Emily. I don't waste bridges, he says, a promise disguised as a sentence. The guests leave with reverent nods. The table is a battlefield of crumbs and victory. Vale approaches the woman who moved $1 billion with grammar and grace. Where did you learn to do that?
I don't
He
waste
asks.
bridges.
Not the vocabulary, the orchestration. Georgetown, Emily says. Oxford Exchange. Summer modules at Sophia University. 2 years in Kyoto. And 5 years serving people who never see you teaches you to hear what they can't say. What pulled you out of school? His voice is gentle, not prying. My mother, Emily answers. Multiple sclerosis. We ran out of money before we ran out of love. Debt can rearrange your identity until you only recognize yourself by what you're paying for. Silence, the warm kind. He takes out a black card. This is not a tip, he says. It's my personal number. Call me at 9. I'm not buying your time. I'm offering a job. Doing what? She asks because that is the right question. Telling me what everyone else is too proud or too afraid to see. At 9 a.m., a town car idles under a Queens tenement like an astronaut who took a wrong exit. The elevator at Vale Tower opens straight into sky. Glass, light, and the quiet hum of systems that do not fail. Vale stands by the window, hands in pockets, looking at the city like a circuit you fix by listening. Head of International Strategy and Negotiations, he says, sliding a tablet contract across the table. Salary that looks like a printing error. Signing bonus the size of a miracle. Stock options. Platinum healthcare for Emily, and for Maya Stone. You'll be tested, he warns. Some will call you a fluke. Don't argue. Outperform. He places a second file beside the contract. Daniel Chun. Family emergency was real. Catastrophic bills. Freelance scraps. A daughter in and out of hospitals. Build me a translation protocol that treats interpreters like pilots, Vale says. Hire Daniel as senior linguistics advisor. Make sure his daughter never needs to fight insurance for oxygen. Emily's throat tightens. Yes, she whispers, and the yes is a vow. Welcome to the work, he answers. And the work begins. Corporate corridors have microclimates. This one is mostly overcast with a chance of cutting humor. Waitress. Party trick. Won't last a quarter. Emily arrives before anyone. Leaves after everyone. She studies not only contracts but customs. Who bows deeper, who jokes to mask fear, who corrects gently. A Germany stalemate lands on her desk with the weight of a falling piano. She opens the video call in fluent German, restores authorship clauses, and treats engineers like composers whose names belong on the album cover. The deal closes in an hour. The room in Munich applauds through a screen. Some dismiss it as luck. The builders do not. Daniel Chun does not. Jared pretends not to notice and notices. At 2:41 a.m., 3 gossip blogs schedule posts accusing Emily of resumed fiction and staging the interpreter's emergency. At 7:05, whispers flood the 23rd floor. At 7:18, a board member forward marks a link with the delicate subject line, optics. Jared appears at the door with sympathy arranged on his face like furniture. We should consider distance. For the market, Vale does not look up. Bring evidence. Not fumes, he says. At 8:02, Emily walks in with a folder thick as a legal thriller. Georgetown transcripts, Oxford letters, Sophia modules, Kyoto rental records, affidavits, time-stamped correspondence. She lays them out with surgeon's hands. And the interpreter? A board member asks, apology already forming. Daniel Chen speaks. My daughter coded blue that night. Your records are here. I will never forgive that tile pattern. If anyone wants me to swear, give me a Bible or my child's heartbeat. Either is fine. Silence becomes respect. Vale nods once. Treat this as a security incident, he tells the CISO. Trace, confirm, remediate, disclose. IT maps the leak to a private equity scout courting a junior staffer with promotion fairy tales. HR, legal, security move like a single being. Contracts are terminated, badges disabled, counsel retained. Vale issues one line on camera. We do not outsource truth to rumor. The market blinks and goes back to the only language it respects, results. Jared lingers, then leaves. Emily breathes. Not triumph, oxygen. In Tokyo, 10 hours a day in a white room where politeness has the tensile strength of steel. The problem is not math. It is assumptions shaped like math. The American simulation assumes linear throughput. The Japanese model assumes holistic supervisory cycles. 2 correct answers to different questions. At 4:03 a.m., in a hotel room that smells like tea and fatigue, Emily finds the seam. She redraws the system until both philosophies lock like gears. Tahiro Sato in Japanese. Your model anticipates reality. Ours accelerates it. Together we get anti-fragility. To her engineers in English. They manage the horizon. We manage the sprint. We braid them. The room goes silent. Then Hiro Sato stands and bows low. Stone-san, he says. This solution is beautiful. Contracts extend. Timelines compress. Respect becomes friendship. An exchange rate far better than cash. On the flight home, Jared sits across the aisle, chews the inside of his cheek and finally says, how did you know they'd accept that framing? I didn't, Emily replies. I respected what they love. People say yes to futures that protect what they love. Something thaws behind his eyes. At 8:17 p.m., a cyber attack hits the building like a wave that forgot it was water. Elevators halt. Monitors strobe. Somewhere on 47, an intern starts to cry. Emily doesn't panic. She assigns, translators become hotline switchboards. Engineers become stair runners with radios. Legal becomes rumor control. HR becomes the unit that knocks on every door until every person is accounted for. Vale unlocks a drawer, hands her a sat phone. You take east. I'll take west. Systems hum back at 3:12 a.m. A cheer rolls through 47 floors, the sound of a city block remembering its pulse. Emily leans on glass, watches the river insist on flowing. Where did you learn that? Vale asks. In a restaurant, she says. When a tour bus arrives early and the dishwasher breaks. Disasters are just dinner rushes with worse lighting. He laughs grateful. You're going to change how companies are run. We are, she says. If we accept that the most important metrics don't fit on a quarterly PDF. Special projects began modestly, with a cluster of desks pushed together, but quickly evolved into a full-fledged department, complete with its own designated space. The department operated on a simple yet powerful principle. Language access should be considered a fundamental standard, not a mere accommodation. Contract writers were consistently recognized for their contributions. their work valued as essential. The cultural sensitivities and requirements of individuals were carefully taken into account when planning schedules and time off, never overlooked or dismissed. From the outset, an exit with dignity clause was standard, ensuring that no one would ever feel pressured or coerced into an agreement that felt like a trap. As a result, deals were finalized more efficiently, and integration proceeded smoothly. Even the stock market seemed to acknowledge the positive impact of this approach, apparently recognizing that trust is, indeed, good for profits. Daniel Chun spearheaded the development of a comprehensive, top-tier interpreter system, encompassing detailed checklists, backup plans, emergency protocols, and health benefits that prioritized mental well-being alongside physical health. The transformative changes he implemented brought a renewed spark to his daughter's eyes. He began to smile with the confidence of a man who knew his future held boundless possibilities. Emily extended employment opportunities to freelancers who had previously been overlooked, yet whose behind-the-scenes contributions were vital to closing deals. Within a mere 3 months, half of them had been brought on board as full-time employees. Productivity skyrocketed. It turned out that simple gratitude could be an incredibly powerful motivator. Jared appeared at her office door, making no attempt to feign innocence. "I was focused on measuring tenure," he admitted. "You were focused on measuring value. I was wrong. Help me assemble a team so exceptionally skilled that they eventually make my own position obsolete," she challenged. "That's how we can establish a winning strategy for the next 20 years.
Excuse me, do you have a moment?
Yes.
He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the proposal.
I admit
"Ambitious,"
I admit
he
fault.
acknowledged. "Essential,"
bench.
she countered firmly. Marcus Vance made an appearance on television, flashing a smile that resembled that of a shark in a tuxedo. He unveiled a cultural consortium, strongly implying Tanaka Dynamics' involvement. Emily immediately requested access to the data room to thoroughly examine public records, private rumors, and contractor lists. Patterns began to emerge, revealing that a questionable NGO was disguising forced overtime sweatshops as training centers. "We walk away," Jared declared, his long-suppressed anger now burning fiercely within him. "We condemn this practice." Vale remained composed, his expression unwavering. "We condemn and we replace. Anyone can release a condemning press statement. We are going to create a supply chain that eliminates the need to compromise our values." Emily and Daniel collaborated on the development of a robust audit process, incorporating unannounced interviews conducted in native languages, wage verification, and the appointment of third-party monitors selected by the workers themselves, not by management. All of this came at a financial cost. The board members noticeably paled at the figures. Vale stepped forward, his resolve unwavering. "I'll absorb the hit," he stated. The stock price dipped briefly, then stabilized and eventually surged as the market recognized the premium value of scandal-proof margins. Vance sneered on camera, his anger palpable. 2 months later, investigators froze one of his shell corporations. Tanaka Dynamics released statements in both Japanese and English, praising partners who uphold their promises, even when no one is watching. Emily resisted the urge to post a celebratory tweet. Instead, she placed a call to the clinic's nurse who had penned the initial anonymous letter and told her, "We saw you. It mattered." The studio lights, soft yet insistent, had a way of making everything seem perfect, even sorrow. The morning show anchor leaned forward, displaying the practiced warmth that concealed a sharper edge. "They're calling this a Cinderella story," she announced. "The waitress who rose to become the voice of a billion-dollar company. Do you feel like magic brought you here?"
Thank you for taking
Emily
the time
smiled,
to speak with me.
offering a genuine, unscripted
we
expression
appreciate your
of
visit.
steadiness.
You have several
"I wasn't
options we can
discovered,"
consider.
she corrected.
We'll choose comfort,
I
doctor.
spoke up. The real magic was that someone actually listened. The host's eyebrows arched, clearly trying to steer the conversation toward a romantic angle. "And you're in love with the wealthiest man alive?" Emily didn't hesitate in her response. "I'm in love with a man who listens more than he speaks," she replied. That answer resonated far beyond the studio audience. The clip quickly went viral, trending for a fleeting 12 hours before the internet moved on to its usual obsessions: cats, outrage, and recipes. But within the company, a subtle yet significant shift occurred. Middle managers began arriving at meetings not with prepackaged solutions, but with genuine questions. Small yet seismic change. Then came the unexpected call. A Tuesday masquerading as a Wednesday. Maya Stone had collapsed during a therapy session. Emily rushed to the private hospital suite, which was lemon-scented and filled with monitors that breathed like weary lungs. Her mother's hands, once so strong and steady, now felt like fragile birds in Emily's grasp. "I met him," Maya whispered, her voice frail but carrying a hint of a secret smile. Emily blinked, confused. "Met who?" "Vale," Maya replied. "He has kind eyes." Emily managed a weak laugh through her tears. "You were unconscious. You still met him." "Kindness leaks," Maya whispered. "It gets in." Adrian stood at the doorway, his jacket folded over his arm, his presence deliberately softened to provide space and comfort. He spoke to the nurses with palpable respect. He waited for Maya's opinion before signing a single form. When the doctor suggested an aggressive treatment plan, one that promised to extend her life by months at the expense of her dignity, Maya firmly shook her head. "I want garden air and my daughter's voice," she stated. No board meeting was held. No one second-guessed her decision. Just pure, unadulterated respect. They chose comfort. They chose life measured in presence, not in medical procedures. Emily moved her into a sunlit room where jasmine bloomed just outside the window. Special projects responded with equal speed, implementing family days across every office location, providing employees with time off for moments that truly mattered. These were quiet policy changes that cost little financially but gave everything in terms of human value. HR updated the company handbook to reflect these changes. Shareholders remained largely oblivious. Employees, however, noticed and appreciated the difference. On the morning Maya passed away, the air carried the subtle fragrance of tea leaves and spring blossoms. Emily held her hand until the warmth faded into memory. Adrian sat with her until the machines ceased their beeping. They didn't speak. Grief already possessed its own powerful language. At the memorial service, Daniel Chun was the first to speak. His voice, heavy with emotion yet resolute, echoed through the room. Some people teach by instruction. Maya taught by permission, permission to be human at work. His words became a mantra, a phrase whispered in hallways, printed on posters, and incorporated into slide decks without attribution, because it had become universally understood and embraced. Employees carried it like a sacred text. Permission to be human. Weeks later, Emily returned to the same studio for another interview. This time, the anchor asked her what it meant to lead after experiencing such a profound loss. Emily didn't sugarcoat the pain or attempt to minimize the impact of her grief. She said, "It means you don't pretend the chair at the table isn't empty. You said it anyway. You remember the person who belonged there. And then you keep building so no one else has to sit alone." The clip didn't go viral this time, but it resonated deeper, touching people in a more profound way. Employees pinned it to breakroom bulletin boards. Teachers shared it in classrooms. A nurse wrote to say that she played it for her team before a shift, and the entire floor operated with a different spirit that day. Grief became a compass, not a burden, and Maya's absence transformed into something vibrant, a silent rule that proclaimed, dignity first. Always dignity first. And that was the strange, enduring magic. Not the kind involving crowns or fairy dust. The kind that leaks. The kind that gets in. The Swiss acquisition shimmered like a pristine mountain in winter, alluring and seemingly inevitable. The financial projections were dazzling. The brand whispered of prestige and exclusivity. Every analyst hailed it as a crown jewel just waiting to be claimed. But as Emily meticulously reviewed the due diligence binder, she slowed down where others sped up, paying close attention to detail. Buried deep within the footnotes, she discovered it. Revenue recognized during transit. Shipments were being counted as if they had already been delivered. And invoices were treated as victories long before the goods had even cleared customs. A deceptive practice so sharp it could cut any hand careless enough to trust it. She marked the page, closed the folder, looked directly at Vale. "Walk away," she stated firmly. "And disclose." Legal counsel advised against it. "We can make adjustments later after the deal closes," they argued. Pierre began drafting vague statements, sentences laden with caveats that sounded like safety nets but were actually skillful disguises. Silence was tempting. Everyone wanted the crown jewel to remain untarnished. Vale asked her one question, the only one that truly mattered. "If you were small or scared without a safety net, would you buy this?" Emily didn't hesitate. "No," she said. "Then we won't sell it to anyone," he replied simply. It was that simple. But simple decisions often cut the deepest. They walked away from the deal. They disclosed the issues publicly, bearing all. The stock price sagged in the short term, a punishment markets often inflict as if from muscle memory. Headlines blared about reckless disclosure and missed opportunity. Competitors smirked. Commentators sneered. Employees braced themselves, preparing for the worst. For weeks, Emily carried the weight of the decision like a stone lodged under her ribs. She remembered the tense silence in the boardroom, the unspoken questions that hung heavy in the air. Was she being too rigid? Too naive? Did her conscience just cost the company billions? 2 quarters later, the answer arrived. The market, initially impatient and unforgiving, eventually circled back. Trust, once a rare commodity, became a valuable currency. Clients who had been hesitant previously signed larger contracts, placing more trust in Tanaka Dynamics. Regulators publicly praised the transparency revealed in the footnotes. Journalists grudgingly shifted their tone, moving from reckless to refreshing. Employees stood taller, proud to be part of an organization that didn't mistake clever fraud for clever business. The real return wasn't measured in profit margins or shareholder value. It was measured in a collective sense of relief. Workers in the field no longer had to defend half-truths or questionable practices. Partners no longer had to wonder whether the numbers were just a mirage, concealing deeper problems. And within the company, the principle of disclosing, even when it hurts, became more than just a policy outlined in a manual. It became ingrained muscle memory, guiding decisions and actions at every level. Late one night, Emily's inbox pinged. It was Jared, yes Jared, who sent her a one-line message. "You saved us from becoming what we said we hated." No signature. No embellishment. Just blunt human acknowledgement. She read it twice, then 3 times, and archived it. Not because it erased the sting of weeks spent under suspicion or the pain of being doubted, but because it represented something far rarer and more valuable: respect from a man who had built his entire life on skepticism. The Swiss deal may have collapsed in the headlines, a casualty of ethical decision-making. But what quietly rose in its place was worth far more than ink or stock prices: credibility. The kind of credibility that outlives a single quarter, the kind that bends markets over years, not weeks. Emily wrote in her journal that night, "Fraud is never clever. It's simply a delay. Justice isn't about punishment. It's about prevention. And sometimes the bravest act is choosing not to sign." And for the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully, without that nagging weight under her ribs. Geneva exuded clarity. The kind of clarity that could almost make you feel self-conscious if you carried too much inner turmoil. The air was crisp and precise, the lake mirrored the sky with deliberate perfection, and the streets hummed with restrained elegance, like a symphony holding its breath between movements. Even the silence seemed carefully curated. It was a city that taught you how to inhale deeply, how to walk as if you were part of its intricate choreography. The Swiss deal had returned in a new form. Clean this time, corrected, transparent. It was the kind of document that no longer trembled under the weight of hidden footnotes or false promises. And now it was ready to be finalized. The final negotiation took place in a room with expansive windows overlooking the shimmering lake. Soft, silvery light streamed in, reflecting across the polished table. Lawyers and translators shuffled papers that felt less like contracts and more like the rhythmic pulse of hearts on paper. Executives wore dark suits, but for once, their body language didn't convey suspicion or guardedness. Instead, they leaned forward as if anticipating a musical performance, eager to hear the next note. It didn't begin in English. It began in Swiss German. Rounded vowels softened consonants, a cadence marked by respect rather than authority. I watched their faces change. First surprise, then relief, then something deeper, trust. Because I hadn't come to fight or dominate. I had come to compose and harmonize. My words didn't land like blows, seeking to inflict damage. They unfolded like musical notes, creating a harmonious melody. We navigated obstacles as if they were improvisations, refrains waiting to be rephrased and refined. Deadlocks eased when language transformed from competing weapons into shared music, fostering understanding and collaboration. One engineer, wearied by months of revisions and feeling defeated, leaned forward with gratitude when I reinstated his authorship clauses, restoring recognition for his work where profit margins had attempted to erase it. He thanked me and called me a conductor, not a negotiator. I smiled because that's all I ever wanted this work to be. Not the crushing of opposition, but the composition of fairness, equity, and shared success. 12 minutes. That's all it ultimately took to finalize the agreement. 5 pens scratching across thick paper. 12 minutes that condensed months of storms, doubts, rumors, and tension into lines that bound us together, solidifying a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. When the final signature was placed, applause arose. Not loud or triumphant, but measured and respectful. The applause of people who knew they could finally rest without the pressure of suspicion or the fear of hidden agendas. Vale had flown in for the occasion. Not to rescue, not to intervene. He stood at the back of the room, arms folded, a faint smile flickering across his lips as the applause echoed. He wasn't the star of the moment, nor did he seek to be. He came as a witness to the proof that honesty, patience, and the refusal to take shortcuts could still lead to victory in a market obsessed with speed and short-term gains. That evening we strolled along the promenade. The lake turned lavender as the sun bled into the horizon, the water shimmering like velvet. Couples strolled hand in hand. Cyclists glided by on narrow paths. The entire city seemed to slow down, as if it too understood the meaning of keeping a promise and honoring commitments. Vale stopped near the railing, watching the lake breathe against the stone. His voice was soft, almost conversational. "The board created a COO role," he said. "We voted last week. Unanimous. It's yours." For a moment the words didn't register. Who? Chief Operating Officer. A title I had once seen printed under the names of others, people featured in glossy magazine profiles and hailed as corporate titans. Not me. Never me. I felt myself split in two, the waitress who once measured worth in tips and hours, and the woman who had taught a company to measure worth in promises kept and values upheld. My throat tightened with emotion, but my voice remained steady. "I want it," I said. He grinned, a rare display of unguarded joy and sincere admiration. "One condition," he added. I tilted my head, curious about the stipulation. "A month off. Not for a deal. For you," he clarified. The condition struck me harder than the title itself. Because titles are recognition of achievement and status. But rest? Rest is respect. Rest is permission to be whole, not just useful. It's an acknowledgement of inherent worth beyond productivity. I nodded, already knowing where I would go to find that sense of wholeness. Kyoto. A small town with narrow streets where paper lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, casting dancing shadows. A bakery where a man once corrected my grammar while kneading dough, offering a subtle lesson in language and humility. An old woman who corrected my honorifics with sharp eyes and a softer smile, imparting wisdom and cultural understanding. A station master who drew me a map with patience so generous you could fold it into your pocket like a blessing, guiding me on my journey. They had given me more than just language skills and cultural insights. They had given me the courage to belong, the confidence to speak in ways that transformed suspicion into applause, and the wisdom to lead with both strength and compassion. That night, as the lavender sky faded into velvet, I understood success in a new light, stripped of its superficial trappings. Success wasn't about the applause, the contract, or the title. Success was the ability to look back, trace the hands that had steadied you along the way, and offer a heartfelt personal thank you. Because gratitude, I realized, is the only currency that never loses its value, remaining a constant source of richness and fulfillment. And as we left the promenade, I knew that COO wasn't a destination to be reached or a peak to be conquered. It was a vow to be upheld, a commitment to be honored, a vow to shape not only how a company operated, but also how it remembered its own humanity, fostering a culture of empathy, integrity, and purpose. Kyoto in spring was more than just a place to visit. It was a pilgrimage to be undertaken, a journey of self-reflection and renewal. Every corner echoed with a lesson I had once struggled to learn. Every lantern seemed to burn with a kindness I hadn't yet earned back then. Returning here now wasn't simply tourism or a fleeting escape. It was closure, a chance to make peace with the past. It was gratitude embodied, a tangible expression of appreciation for the lessons learned and the people who had shaped me. The mornings began with the resonant sound of temple bells, their deep tones echoing across tiled rooftops still glistening with dew, washing away the remnants of the night. I would walk those narrow streets barefoot within my memory, retracing my steps with a newfound sense of understanding and acceptance. Years ago they had mocked me with my own clumsiness, my broken phrases, my flawed grammar, my shame tucked into every shallow bow and every stiff honorific. But this time I walked with a different weight, a lightness of spirit. Not pride or arrogance, but simply the ease of knowing that imperfection can be the foundation for transformation, the catalyst for growth and self-discovery. The baker greeted me with his signature rolling laugh, the same laugh that had once eased my frustration when my tongue betrayed me and my words failed to capture my intentions. He dusted the flour from his hands and teased gently. "You spoke like thunder before, forceful and overwhelming. Now you sound like rain, gentle and nourishing." I laughed until my eyes stung, tears of joy and gratitude blurring my vision. Because he was right, his words ringing with truth. I had once forced my way into this culture like a storm, impatient and foreign, demanding to be understood. Now I could flow like water, adaptable and yielding, still marked by difference but not fighting it. The old woman, as fierce and unwavering as ever, scolded my bow once more. Her critical eye still sharp and discerning. But when I bent lower, not out of obligation or fear, but out of genuine gratitude and heartfelt respect, her nod was almost imperceptible, a subtle sign of approval. Yet that small gesture contained volumes, conveying a depth of meaning that transcended words. It was her way of saying, "You have finally understood." Respect isn't about rigid rules or empty formalities. It's about recognition, about seeing and valuing the humanity in others. The station master was no longer there, his presence missed. But his daughter's tears when she saw the old map, the precious artifact I had carried with me, carried me somewhere deeper, connecting me to a legacy of kindness and generosity. That map was just a scrap of paper, lines drawn in pencil. Yet it had guided me to safety years ago, providing direction and reassurance in a time of uncertainty. Now it guided me to this moment, a tangible proof that no act of patience or compassion ever vanishes completely. It folds itself into someone's future, shaping their path in ways we can't always see. Every afternoon, I visited temples, seeking solace and inspiration in their serene spaces. I lit incense not as a request for personal gain, but as an offering of gratitude for the blessings in my life. I bowed not for permission or favor, but for acknowledgement, recognizing the interconnectedness of all things. I tucked fortunes into cracks in wood, sharing hope with strangers. I folded wishes beneath stones, sending silent prayers into the universe. Each slip of paper was for someone nameless, a student struggling to succeed, a mother grieving a loss, a child lonely in a noisy world. Gratitude demanded to be shared forward, rippling outwards to touch the lives of others. And in that simple ritual I felt Sarah with me, her presence a constant comfort. My sister, whose absence had taught me that language could live even in silence, that connection could transcend physical presence. Kyoto granted me the stillness to realize a profound truth. She had never truly left me. She was woven into every sign I made, every word I translated, every promise I kept, her spirit guiding my actions. One evening, as lanterns flickered like miniature galaxies above the river, casting a magical glow, my phone lit up with a photo from Daniel of his daughter. Alive. Running. Laughing. Her wet hair a banner of survival, symbolizing resilience and the triumph of hope. "We made it," he wrote, his words carrying the weight of their shared journey. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart swell with emotion. Tears streamed down my face, not as grief this time, but as proof that hope could land safely, that dreams could be realized. I turned off the phone, allowing the silence itself to become my prayer, a moment of quiet communion with the universe. When I returned to Aurelia, to the dazzling skyline that represented ambition and innovation, I found Vale waiting, his presence a source of strength and reassurance. The room was familiar, but the world had shifted, transformed by the experiences I had undergone and the lessons I had learned. He asked me about the first words I had ever spoken to him, words spoken in anger and defiance. I teased him about it, my memory hazy, but he remembered them more clearly than I did, recalling every nuance and inflection. He remembered the dignity I had tried to defend, not for myself or for personal gain, but for a young boy who deserved to be heard and understood. That was the moment he fell in love, he confessed, his voice soft and sincere, not for my appearance or my accomplishments, but for my courage, my unwavering commitment to justice, and my deep sense of empathy. Then came the ring, a symbol of commitment and devotion. Not gold, not encrusted with diamonds or precious stones, flaunting wealth and status. Silver. Thin. Simple. Understated in its elegance. Engraved with a single word, freedom. Freedom to walk away, to choose a different path. Freedom to stay, to build a life together. Freedom to choose, to live authentically and without constraints. And in that trembling moment, I understood a profound truth. Love is not about ownership or control. Love is the one contract written without fine print or hidden clauses, based entirely on trust and mutual respect. I said yes, my voice filled with emotion and certainty. Not out of need or desperation seeking validation or security. Not out of obligation or pressure, feeling bound by societal expectations. But because love had become the language I was finally fluent in. A language that transcended words and spoke directly to my soul. We drove to Maya's garden, where jasmine hummed with bees, its fragrance filling the air with sweetness. I touched the bench she once sat on and felt her blessing rise like warmth through the wood, a gentle reminder of her presence. The dead, I realized, are never truly gone. They are woven into the choices we make, the love we allow, the justice we build, their spirits living on through us. Kyoto taught me how to bow, to show respect and humility. Aurelia taught me how to fight, to stand up for what is right. Love taught me how to stay, to commit and build a life with another. And as I held that silver band, a symbol of freedom and commitment, I knew that freedom wasn't about escape or detachment. Freedom was about choosing the bonds that gave life meaning, the connections that nourished the soul. And I had chosen mine, embracing a future filled with love, purpose, and unwavering commitment to creating a better world. Chapter 17. The room with more chairs extended. Change didn't sweep in with fanfare or a dramatic flourish. It arrived subtly, personified by extra chairs. These weren't mere symbolic placeholders, mind you, but tangible, honest-to-goodness chairs. They started appearing in conference rooms, forming inclusive circles around tables, and lining the polished walls previously reserved for executive privilege. It was a seemingly simple shift in furniture, but it signaled a profound transformation. The company had essentially discarded its outdated playbook and begun anew, guided by a fresh set of principles. Now the focus wasn't solely on prestigious degrees or elite academic pedigrees. It was about practical intelligence and the hard-won wisdom forged in the crucible of real-world experience. Suddenly, life experience, grit, and adaptability became more highly valued than any piece of parchment. It was as though the company had finally seen the light, recognizing that talent manifests in every conceivable shape, size, and background. And just like that, the room started to resonate with a different energy. New voices, previously marginalized or silenced, chimed in, injecting previously unheard perspectives into the mix. The conversations deepened, becoming richer, more nuanced, and significantly more engaging. The stale echo chamber, where agreement with the loudest voice was the norm, was shattered. We hired a refugee who had miraculously maintained a fragile supply chain across 3 volatile borders, juggling burner phones and fueled by sheer resilience. His knowledge of logistics, risk assessment, and human motivation was invaluable, surpassing any textbook theory. His insights weren't gleaned from some dusty management tome. He'd lived them on the front lines, navigating the precarious space between desperation and hope. His expertise was invaluable, far surpassing anything a traditional MBA education could provide. He knew how to make things happen against seemingly insurmountable odds, and that kind of practical acumen was priceless. We brought in a librarian who carried legal codes and precedents like keys on a ring, instinctively knowing how to unlock dormant rulings and open doors others deemed permanently sealed. Her ability to navigate the complex labyrinth of the legal system was astounding. Her deep understanding of legal history and her ability to unearth obscure rulings saved the company millions in potential liabilities. She was a walking encyclopedia of legal knowledge, and she used it to champion fairness and transparency, ensuring ethical conduct and compliance. We even hired a pastry chef who had skillfully managed a kitchen crew through fires and blackouts, handling crises with sugar, steel, and an unwavering calm that bordered on superhuman. Her organizational prowess, her talent for delegating tasks under pressure, and her unwavering commitment to quality were readily transferable to the corporate world. Her talent for leadership and her ability to maintain productivity under duress were invaluable assets, and she brought a unique perspective to problem solving. She knew how to keep a team motivated and focused, even when the pressure was intense, because she had faced far more challenging circumstances. The executives raised their eyebrows, and the investors whispered their doubts, skeptical of our unconventional hiring practices. They struggled to understand why we were recruiting individuals who didn't fit the traditional corporate mold. They were accustomed to resumes overflowing with prestigious degrees and impressive-sounding titles, not narratives of survival, resilience, and unconventional creativity. But the real world doesn't cater to naysayers or adhere to rigid conventions. The world rewards those who are willing to take calculated risks, challenge the status quo, and embrace innovative ideas, regardless of their source. The world values adaptability, resourcefulness, and the ability to learn from experience, traits that are often overlooked in traditional hiring practices. That's where they come from. The company had deliberately chosen to invest in people, in their untapped abilities, and in their potential to offer something truly unique and worthwhile. Profits began to steadily flow in, not through some kind of hocus-pocus or act of goodwill, but in the organic way your lungs draw air. Naturally, consistently, inevitably, things just fell into place. You simply allow people the space to breathe, to be authentic, and then observe the amazing things they accomplish. When people genuinely feel a sense of belonging, they will inevitably build something extraordinary. It's a straightforward concept, yet so many companies overlooked it for far too long. Then the quarterly report started featuring a new line item: kept promises. Financial analysts scoffed, dismissing it as a mere public relations stunt, perhaps even a bit too emotionally driven. Their focus remained solely on the figures, the bottom line, the standard metrics for gauging success. They were unable to grasp the inherent value of trust, integrity, and genuine human connection. But their calculations, they were simply way off the mark. Gradually, they began to understand the connection. How kept promises, directly correlated with employee retention, strong profits, and groundbreaking innovation. What they had initially written off as a fluffy sentiment turned out to be the most robust foundation imaginable. Special projects, which had previously been tucked away in some obscure corner, became the company's crowning achievement. It symbolized the potential that emerges when a company dares to prioritize people over profits, wholeheartedly embraces diversity in all its forms, and consistently follows through on its commitments. Competitors began dispatching their consultants to snoop around, attempting to decipher what they perceived as a secret formula. They came up empty-handed because, while you can certainly replicate a process, you can't fabricate genuine care. You can't quantify empathy, you can't automate compassion, and you definitely can't outsource integrity. Listening isn't a piece of software. It's a state of being present. It's about being fully attentive, about paying close attention not only to what people say but also to what they don't say. It's about truly understanding their fears, their aspirations, and their dreams. And that's simply not something you can put on like a costume. One ordinary Wednesday, the kind that wouldn't warrant a mention in any history book, I convened a roundtable discussion. The room wasn't filled with high-powered executives in tailored suits, but with interpreters, nurses, factory workers, and junior engineers, the very people who would have never received an invitation before. These were the unsung heroes of the company, the individuals who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure everything ran smoothly. I posed a simple question to them. What promise can we make this quarter that will still hold significance 10 years from now? I wasn't seeking immediate solutions or short-term gains. I wanted to know what truly mattered to them, what they believed was essential for the company's long-term success. They didn't provide me with spreadsheets or data-driven analyses. They offered me stories. They spoke honestly and openly, sharing their personal experiences and their deepest concerns. They reminded me of the human impact of doing business, of the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. A nurse recounted the story of a patient in intense pain who had to repeatedly retell their story to 5 different individuals, each time reopening the emotional wound. Her request was simple: streamline the paperwork. Simplify the process so that patients don't have to relive their trauma every time they seek medical attention. Reduce the administrative burden so that healthcare professionals can focus on what truly matters: healing. So patients wouldn't have to endlessly re-experience their worst moments. A young engineer, speaking quietly but with unwavering determination, requested recognition when a product was launched, to have her name associated with it. We write the code but we're never in the headlines, she pointed out, her voice tinged with frustration. Don't erase us. A line worker, his hands a weathered map of winters past, etched with scars from cheap, inadequate gloves, held them up for us to see. He wasn't asking for the impossible, just a thorough inspection of the company's safety equipment. Promises break when gloves break, he said, his words heavy with the weight of experience. I diligently recorded everything, every syllable, every subtle nuance. A year and a half later, those words had resonated, fundamentally reshaping 3 major company policies and averting 2 potential product disasters. None of those employees had ever even glanced at an analyst's report, yet their contributions were reflected in every single profit margin the company reported. And then there was Jared. For years, he had been my adversary, the ever-present critic, the smooth voice that spread doubt like an overpowering wave of expensive cologne. At his farewell party, he stood before everyone and said something that brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened workers on the factory floor. I used to believe leadership was about wielding authority, about being the dominant voice in the room. But I've come to realize that there's a much better way to measure leadership: by the promises you keep. Everyone applauded. Not in English, not in German, not in Mandarin, but in the universal language of respect, a language understood in every corner of the world. Vale and I, we definitely clashed at times. Loudly. Our disagreements would span across time zones, disrupting sleep schedules, suppliers cutting corners on quality, and those infuriating headlines that seem to confuse being kind with being weak. But one thing we never ever disagreed about was the importance of listening. Listening was absolutely essential. It had become the core principle, the new golden rule by which we operated. And during those long, quiet evenings, after everyone had left the building and the city's pulse throbbed just outside, I would find myself sitting alone in that room, surrounded by empty chairs. I'd run my hand along the smooth surface of the conference table, and I'd think about the refugee, the librarian, the pastry chef whose stories had filled the space. I'd remember the nurse's meticulous forms, the engineer's pride in authorship, and the line worker's worn gloves. I would think about how one simple question had blossomed into a whole new future, a future none of us could have foreseen. The room itself felt different, somehow transformed. The air crackled with a new energy, a palpable sense of possibility. And perhaps, just perhaps, the future itself had been transformed too. Because growth isn't some predictable sterile graph. Growth is more like a table that constantly needs more chairs, an ever-expanding circle of voices, each one enriching the conversation. They recount the story as if it were some kind of simple fairy tale. The unassuming waitress who somehow single-handedly saved $1 billion. They endlessly repeat it, as if the sheer amount of money was the most important thing, the only thing worth remembering. They sanitize the entire story, transforming it into a neat, tidy myth, devoid of its true essence. But here's the crucial element that they always omit, the human aspect that gets lost in the retelling. I wasn't just saving a number on a spreadsheet. I was saving a room. A room that had slowly begun to suffocate under the crushing weight of complacency and the overbearing arrogance of constant, unchecked noise. A room where those in positions of power mistakenly believed they already possessed all the answers, until they were finally compelled to actually listen to a voice they hadn't bothered to invite to the table. What I did wasn't some act of magic or divine intervention. It was simply an act of defiance. A refusal to be treated as nothing more than a statistic, as mere inventory to be accounted for. A refusal to allow my worth to be measured by silence and dismissed without consideration. And it was in that act of defiance, in that firm stance, that I truly discovered the profound power of listening. Listening isn't just a matter of basic politeness. Listening is a form of intricate engineering, but instead of steel and concrete, you're working with human elements. With dignity. With underlying fear. With fierce pride. With unwavering hope for a brighter future. Carefully arrange and consider those elements, and you don't just solve immediate problems. You build solid foundations that will endure for generations. He didn't place some symbolic crown upon my head. That's the part of the fairy tale that they always seem to get wrong, the part that completely misses the entire point. He listened to me. He genuinely heard what I had to say, truly absorbed it. And then he did what true power is actually meant to do. He created space for those ideas to flourish. A crown can only ever sit on one head, a single individual. Space, on the other hand, open, welcoming space, can hold and nurture everyone. Those perfectly executed contracts that people are always idealizing and holding up as the gold standard? Sure, they were technically signed in ink. But ink is ultimately temporary, easily erased. It doesn't truly last simply because of the expensive paper it's written on, but because it was initially signed with genuine respect and mutual understanding, and because it is consistently reaffirmed every single day through promises being kept and commitments being honored. When people ask me for advice on how to truly and profoundly improve someone's life, I don't hand them some complicated strategic plan filled with confusing jargon. I offer them the plain, simple truth. Begin with one courageous sentence, spoken with conviction, and then find just one single person who is willing to genuinely listen without judgment. That right there, in its simplest form, is the blueprint for profound transformation. And when they ask him, the guy who literally has the power to move entire markets with a single word, whose statements can send ripples through industries, about the real secret to achieving massive scale and lasting impact, he doesn't launch into some dry recitation of numbers and figures. He simply states with quiet confidence, attention is the most valuable resource we have. Invest it wisely, in places and in people where it will grow and multiply. Sometimes, late at night, we'll take a leisurely walk past Aurelia. Our fingers intertwined, laughter bubbling up between us as we can't help but notice how incredibly small and insignificant the door to that room seems now. Rooms have a funny way of seeming much smaller and less intimidating once you've truly learned how to breathe freely and take up space inside them. Because the space that you cultivate within yourself, that intangible space that's built on a foundation of mutual respect, unwavering trust, and consistently kept promises, is always going to be far larger and more expansive than any physical building or towering skyscraper could ever be. That's the crucial and often overlooked part of the story that the myth almost always leaves out, the part that truly matters, the heart of the matter. But I will absolutely continue to tell it, to anyone who will listen, anyone willing to lend an ear. Because ultimately, that's the real and enduring story. Not the billions of dollars that were saved, not the symbolic crown that was politely declined, but the room that was painstakingly rebuilt, brick by brick, a room that is finally large enough and welcoming enough to hold and embrace all of us.